Hello, everybody. Welcome to my review of Let's Go Play at the Atoms by Mendel W. Johnson. The first half of this review is spoiler-free. The second half is going to have some spoilers. I would have preferred to do it all spoiler-free like I did for my review of When Darkness Loves Us, but there was just so much in this book to talk about. I just have to talk about it with somebody. So the first half is spoiler-free. And this was a great story. And I know the selling point for a lot of people were the great covers on these books, these 70s and 80s painted covers. But these all have had good stories so far. I absolutely loved When Darkness Loves Us. And I love Let's Go Play at the Atoms. And it's got a gorgeous cover as well as a really fun story, really creepy story. I will say though, whoever put the logo right here for Paperbacks from Hell, I wish they would have moved it over just a little bit because I'm just slightly annoyed that it starts to cover her head right there. That just bothers me a little bit. But this was a really fun book, and this is the only book by the author Mendel W. Johnson. And right in here, they do have a little sort of biography on him, just a quick paragraph, and it does mention that he wrote, right here, Johnson wrote some 8 or 9 novels, but the only one to be published was the bestseller, Let's Go Play at the Atoms. And I'm just wondering what happened to those other novels before I get into the review of this one. Those 8 or 9 other ones, I'd actually be curious to read those, so I wonder if Valancourt could somehow put those out. But this book was great. It reminded me a little bit of Misery, a little bit of Lord of the Flies, a little bit of Gerald's Game. I highly recommend this book. I do have one like slight thing I didn't like with the story, and okay, so basically what happens. Sorry, I know I've rambled a lot and didn't get quite into what the story is. Is basically this babysitter, Barbara. She's 20 and she's babysitting these kids that are anywhere from 12 to 17. There's 5 of them, and basically one day they tie her up, as you can see on the cover there. And my only real complaint about that is the motive just is never really quite defined for these kids, and the kids just sort of almost end up having the same personality. Barbara is the only one that stands out as having her own personality, whereas the kids sort of sound the same. It is a really well-written novel. I just think that's the only part that needed, I don't know if I want to say work, because it's just weird for me to critique someone that's a much better writer than I am. And shameless plug also, my 4 books are available on Amazon and Kindle down below. But if I did have to give it one critique though, it's just that the characters in this, they all sort of sounded the same. They didn't really have any motive, and I think personally when it comes to books, especially when you have a few different main characters, when all 5 kids are really in every scene of this book, 99% of the time, I just think that when they have different goals and motives and things they want to accomplish, then they'll start to sound different, act different, and you can tell them apart. I think motive is huge for characters, and I think when everybody wants something different, that's how you could tell them apart. And the kids in this book didn't really seem to have that. I love the story, don't get me wrong. I just wish that their motives maybe would have been better, or just that they at least had their own voices. Because even with I guess they sort of explained their motives a little bit. I know I'm being vague about that, but it's never that clearly defined. They almost just think of it as a game, I guess, but they take it pretty far. And so it seems to me like it would need to be more than just a game to them. But that's it for like the spoiler-free review. So now I'm gonna go into the spoilers, and this is your final warning. So don't. So if you don't want it to be spoiled, just leave now, I suppose. But so like I said, the characters they were sort of flat. They had no real voice. That was the big critique for me. But and I don't mean to be nitpicky about this book because it was a good book, so don't get me wrong. But there's just some other things like, so the parents are out of town for a week, and this whole book takes place over like the course of a week. And the parents just don't call for that whole time they're out of town. That just, I don't know. That would have thrown in like a huge like monkey wrench into this thing, because then how would they get around it if their babysitter is tied up, gagged, and they've tortured her, starved her, done all sorts of things, and the parents just never call. They would have to eventually put the babysitter on the phone, wouldn't they? They couldn't keep making excuses. But I understand, this was the 70s. This book came out in 74. I don't think they give an exact year in the book. So, I mean, I just assume it took place still in the 70s. That's at least how it felt. And so I know it was a different time, but I mean, my parents call like every 5 minutes. So I just have a hard time believing that the parents in this book didn't really call. That they didn't want to check up on their kids, and they're gone for a week. Like they don't even call to say hi. That's one thing. But I mean, I guess that I could just look past that and just say it's a different time. That didn't make or break the book for me. I just thought that was sort of weird. Let me know down in the comments if you read this, if you thought that was weird too. This book was pretty intense and it did make my stomach turn, and the final 70-ish pages just kept me really hooked. I just had to keep turning the pages, finding out what happened. I think last night I read like close to 50 pages, and then as soon as I woke up this morning, I read the like 20 or so that I had left to read, and I just couldn't wait to finish this and see what happened and make this review. But it is a pretty dark, twisted ending, and if you're still watching and you haven't read it, click out now because I don't want to ruin this book for you because it's best to go in blind. But I kept thinking that somehow Barbara would get away. My big thing was, well, this is really tough to talk about, but twice in this book she is raped, and I thought that maybe the DNA left in her body. I know this is gruesome to talk about. I thought that, at least maybe at one point she would say, hey, they're going to figure out you did this because your DNA, blah, blah, blah. Because the kids also talked to her about the coroners and the things they plan to do so that when her body is found, they can't trace it back to the kids. And I thought, well, what about the DNA? And then I Googled it, and it looks like DNA really wouldn't be a thing for like another decade till the 60s, it looks like. So I guess that really never crossed the author's mind because it wasn't a thing yet. And that was my thing. I kept reading this and I was like, well, isn't she going to say something about that? Isn't that going to like the DNA, isn't that going to be evidence? But nope. So that never really comes into play. And so that's not even really like a critique. That's just something I wanted to talk about. But yeah, this book was just really intense and gruesome, and I just did not think she was going to die at the end, and then she does. And I was reading some other reviews of this on Goodreads, just seeing what other people thought, and there's the whole plot with the picker just sort of conveniently being there at the end as a scapegoat. I guess it's like slightly a scapegoat, but it's also believable though, just because their area where they're up in Annapolis, I believe, or maybe Baltimore. And I mean, I guess just the way they talk about it, I mean, and I've actually just been up to Baltimore a few weeks ago for vacation. That was my only time going up there, so I don't know too much about Baltimore, but the way they make it sound in here is like pickers, hobos, people just camping out behind houses at night. Like they make it seem like that's a regular thing. So I know some people saw the picker aspect as like a scapegoat almost. I didn't really think of it that way. Still don't, but I mean, I could understand why they would think of that as a scapegoat, because how convenient. A hobo starts to camp out in the field behind their house, and they get to put his fingerprints everywhere, invite him in to pay him to clean up the house, and then when he, finds the body outside the next day and they shoot him like, oh, we shot the guy that killed our babysitter. And like, it's like, I know that's like a little convoluted, like almost too perfect, like nothing ever went wrong for the kids. But again, that doesn't really like ruin the story for me though, but I do understand that sort of critique just from what I saw other people talking about. But I do want to know your guys' thoughts, what you thought about this book. I really liked it. I really liked When Darkness Loves Us more than this one though, but these books are still really great reads, and both of them I highly recommend. They're great books, great covers, and they're just really fantastic, so I highly recommend Let's Go Play at the Adams. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. And again, my books on Amazon and Kindle, the links to those are all down in the description. I'll also be leaving the link to where you guys could get Paperbacks from Hell as well on the Valancourt Books website. Have a great day, everybody.